Doctor Who has been running for so long that there's been plenty of time for various mysteries to be answered. It took us 33 years to find out what happened to Ace, but we got there in the end, the long way round. However, there are some lingering threads and unanswered questions that, for one reason or another, will likely never be resolved. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Who Culture, here with 10 Doctor Who mysteries that will never be answered. Number 10. Who was Jim the Fish? Like the Singing Towers of Darillium, many of the adventures contained within River Song's diary have subsequently been elaborated upon. The crash of the Byzantium, which received its first mention in Silence of the Library, was eventually depicted 2 years later in The Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone. Meanwhile, 2 accounts of the picnic at Asgard exist in prose, taking place with either the 10th or the 11th Doctor. But one diary entry yet to make it on screen is the Doctor and River's encounter with Jim the Fish, an aquatic ally who remains shrouded in mystery. Jim was first alluded to in the Series 6 opener, The Impossible Astronauts, ultimately serving to highlight the age difference between the older and younger 11th Doctors more than anything else. The older has met him, the younger has not. But as Doctor Who fans, we need answers. Was Jim an actual fish, a fish-human hybrid, or something else entirely? All we're told is that he's still building his dam, which suggests something slightly more sophisticated than your average pet goldfish. As if to rub salt in the wound, the only other time the character is referenced is in The Husbands of River Song, when Fleming remarks that we all know Jim the Fish. Do we? Do we, Fleming? I don't think we do. After 12 years and still no concrete answers, it feels like the mystery of Jim's importance will never be addressed. God damn it! Number 9. Was the Osgood that died human or Zygon? If you're going to introduce a new villain, one way to quickly convince the audience of their evilness is to have them kill a much-loved character. The trouble is, in the process, you lose a much-loved character. That was the corner Stephen Moffat wrote himself into when he had Missy kill Osgood in Death in Heaven. Or so it seemed. After all, following the events of the Day of the Doctor, there were 2 Osgoods knocking about. One human, one Zygon. The suggestion that it was the Zygon Osgood rather than the human Osgood that had met her end first appeared in a 2014 issue of Doctor Who magazine, but it was immediately shot down by Moffat, who said, nah, if it had been a Zygon, she wouldn't have been killed so easily. In reality, sequel story The Zygon Invasion and The Zygon Inversion was in active development by this point, with the mystery of which Osgood died forming a major plot thread. By the end, we were still none the wiser. In retrospect, it's quite right that we never learn the truth. After all, it's what Osgood represents rather than what she is that's important. As Osgood states in The Zygon Invasion, I am the peace, I am human and Zygon. Schrodinger's cat? More like Schrodinger's Osgood. Number 8. What was the Watcher? In the 4th Doctor's swan song Logopolis, the Doctor and his companions are stalked by a being known only as the Watcher. Appearing everywhere from the streets of Logopolis to Barnet Bypass, this ghost-like figure is eventually revealed to have been the Doctor the whole time. Except what does that actually mean? The generally accepted explanation is that the Watcher was a nascent version of the 5th Doctor, a premonition to warn the 4th Doctor that his time is nearly up, similar to how Ood Sigma appears to the 10th Doctor. Certainly the Watcher played a vital role in the regeneration, merging with the 4th Doctor to create the 5th. But can we really consider it the Doctor in its own right? After all, it's very much presented as a separate entity, existing in parallel to the Doctor's timeline rather than being part of it, more like the Valiard than the War Doctor. Putting the question of the Watcher's identity aside, there's also the matter of how it came into being and why. No other handover has played out in this way, and no other Doctor has had their own Watcher. Why? What was it about the 4th Doctor that merited this special treatment other than the fact that he was played by Tom Baker? In short, we don't truly know what the Watcher was, where it came from, or why it actually existed. Like so many things about regeneration, it seems destined to remain a mystery. Number 7. What happened to the Harmony Shoal? The lack of a full series in 2016 meant that options for long-form storytelling were limited. There was, however, one thing connecting the 2 episodes that bookended this gap year: their antagonists. There's some debate as to what exactly this mysterious collective was called. In The Husbands of River Song, it was referred to as the Shoal of the Winter Harmony, while in The Return of Dr. Mysterio, it went by the much more concise Harmony Shoal. And the questions don't stop there. At the end of Dr. Mysterio, a Shoal member is shown to have hijacked a unit's soldier. Viewers could have been forgiven for thinking that this plot thread would be picked up in Series 10, but ultimately it was left dangling. So what did happen next? Was this mole swiftly dealt with, or did it successfully manage to infiltrate UNIT? Is there a whole follow-up invasion that we never witnessed? Is it only a matter of time until Harmony SHOAL gets its own big finish box set? Either way, enough time has passed that a TV rematch is now almost definitely off the table. Number 6. Did Pete's world have a doctor? Pete's world, the parallel universe visited by the Doctor in Series 2, is a reflection of our own world, complete with analogues of Pete, Jackie, Rose and Mickey. And as we later learn, it even has its own Harriet Jones and Yvonne Hartman. By all accounts then, it should also have its own Doctor, right? Yet this doesn't seem to be the case. But why? In story terms, another Doctor would certainly have complicated things. Had a Doctor been present in Pete's world all along, the events of Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel probably wouldn't have even taken place. Everything would have been fixed before the opening titles rolled, rendering our Doctor and the story as a whole pretty much redundant. But supposing there was a Doctor in Pete's world at some point, what were they like? What happened to them, and did they even look like David Tennant? Rose was a dog, so nothing's off the table here. Or perhaps like Mickey's twin, Ricky, the Doctor of Pete's world went by a different name entirely. I'd like to think that in some parallel universe he goes by the Chef. The librarian. Let us know in the comments down below, what alternate name would the Doctor have? Whatever the case of him not being there though, this Doctor-shaped gap would eventually be filled by the Meta-Crisis Doctor in Journey's End. But as Billie Piper has since admitted, he's no match for the real thing. Number 5. Who were the Doctor's family? If you thought the Doctor was difficult to pin down, you should try tracking their family tree. The show's central character has always claimed to have relatives, but the only one we've ever met on screen is his granddaughter Susan, and even her status is unverified. Could she have been the Time Lord President's daughter, stolen by the Doctor when he left Gallifrey as alluded to in Hellbent? Assuming Susan? Hello, Susan? Assuming Susan was the Doctor's real granddaughter, the Doctor must have had children too. Indeed, the 10th Doctor asserted to both Rose and Donna that he had at one point been a father. The 10th Doctor also let slip that he'd once had a brother, while the 13th Doctor made passing references to sisters and 7 grandmothers. How does that work exactly? The one thing we can say for sure is that any relatives of the Doctor are now long gone. However, their influence is still felt. I carry them with me, the Doctor tells Yaz in The Woman Who Fell to Earth. So even though they're gone from the world, they're never gone from me. Of course, the Doctor's real family is the friends that they make along the way. Even so, we can't help but wonder who those original descendants and ancestors were. If that's not a plot that needs to be explored, I don't know what is. Number 4. Did the Doctor push the half-face man? One of the most striking moments in Deep Breath is the climactic showdown between the newly regenerated 12th Doctor and his inaugural adversary, the Half-Face Man. Part of the reason this scene sticks in the memory is because of its ambiguous ending. We know how it ends, with the Half-Face Man atop the spire of Big Ben, but not how he got there. Did he jump, or was he pushed? Well, in typically mysterious Moff fashion, the episode refuses to tell us. The Doctor and the Half-Face Man are at loggerheads, and the only way out is for one of them to deviate from their basic programming. For the Half-Face Man, this means suicide. For the Doctor, it means murder. The more tantalizing outcome is for the Doctor to have pushed the Half-Face Man, a moment that is shockingly uncharacteristic and yet totally in keeping with the more means to an end approach of this new incarnation. The suggestion that the Half-Face Man simply yeeted himself onto Big Ben is, by comparison, pretty underwhelming. Although, there's always the possibility that the Doctor talked him into self-destruction and thus keeping his own hands clean. That final haunting fourth wall breaking shot of the Doctor certainly does seem to suggest some involvement, but we'll never know for sure. Number 3. Where does the Doctor really come from? The Doctor's past really is the gift that keeps on giving. You can add bits to their backstory here and there, but there's always more to discover. Nowhere has this been more evident than in recent years, with the timeless child storyline giving the show's protagonist the most concrete backstory they've ever had, while still leaving plenty of wiggle room. We learned that the Doctor wasn't really from Gallifrey, and had lived multiple other lives prior to the ones we knew about. We were shown the Doctor's original form, and even met her adoptive mother, Tecteun. And yet, in introducing all this lore, showrunner Chris Chibnall left us with more questions than answers. After contemplating whether to open the fob watch containing her hidden memories at the end of Series 13, the Doctor chose to instead bury it deep inside the TARDIS, somewhere she can never find it. As far as the timeless child itself is concerned, we know even less. What species was she? No idea. Who were her original parents or guardians prior to Tecteun? No idea. And where was she really from? Still, no idea. Where did that purple portal lead? Again, you guessed it, no idea. With future showrunners under no obligation to continue their predecessors' stories, even Chibnall believes that RTD will ignore the timeless child. These mysteries aren't likely to be answered anytime soon. Number 2. Why did the 6th Doctor look like MAXIL? Doctor Who is littered with examples of guest actors going on to play more prominent roles. If these characters are sufficiently different from one another, as was the case for Karen Gillan when she made the leap from Soothsayer to Amy Pond, then the connection can go unacknowledged. But if the two characters do look similar, an explanation is usually contrived. Hence why Adiola and Martha Jones were cousins, for example. Likewise, the 12th Doctor's resemblance to the man he'd saved from Vesuvius's eruption wasn't a coincidence, but rather a deliberate move on the part of his subconscious to remind him to save people. So why on Gallifrey did the 6th Doctor adopt the likeness of Time Lord Commander MAXIL, a character also played by Colin Baker? Was a similar force at play with the Doctor's subconscious helping to select his new face? If so, MAXIL is a puzzling choice. He caused nothing but trouble for the 5th Doctor, even going as far as to shoot him with a staser. Perhaps the Doctor was trying to tell himself how not to behave, but even that's a bit of a stretch, really. Alternatively, could MAXIL have been the 6th Doctor all along in some other guise? They certainly have a similar temperament. We'll probably never know for sure, and it's probably just as well. Number 1. What is the Doctor's name? It's the age-old question, hidden in plain sight for 60 years. It's also the question that more than any other on this list can never, ever be answered. Aside from a few references here and there, for instance Ian Chesterton remarking that if we knew his name we might have a clue to all this, Classic Who and the beginning of the revived series had little to say on the matter. But then Stephen Moffat came along, and the Doctor's name became a much bigger deal. We met another character who knew what it was in the form of the wonderful River Song. Then, as the 50th anniversary approached, speculation surrounding the Doctor's name reached an all-time high, and for a moment it seemed like it might finally be revealed in an episode literally titled The Name of the Doctor. In the end though, this turned out to be a sneaky bit of misdirection to lead us back round to the title Doctor and what that stands for. The promise to never be cruel and never be cowardly. Still, the question remains, and it always will. We all know deep down that any answer would be a massive anticlimax. But that doesn't stop us asking, Doctor Who? And that's everything for this list, but fear not, some mysteries actually were answered, just not where you'd expect. So why not check out 10 Doctor Who mysteries explained outside the show? In the meantime, I've been Ellie with Who Culture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.